Hey, hi, Tom from BKM Nutrition, and today I've got with me one of my very oldest and also old friends, Lindsay Bruce, who I met when we were bodybuilding together on the bodybuilding circuit. We are now both coaches in our own right. We both coach men as a speciality, and I've asked Lindsay to come onto the my YouTube channel, onto my podcast, to talk about how he coaches, how he gets the best results from the guys he works with, and also his background and how that influences him. So, Lindsay, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Tom.
No, it's a pleasure, mate. It's an absolute pleasure. I know we've talked on my prep podcast with Paul before, so we have done podcasts together. So, but today I wanted to give you a bit of a say what your background is, how you got into coaching, and all the stuff that led you to where you are now, and how you work with coaches. So a little bit of background.
Yeah, I mean, how far back do you want me to go? Just like
anything that's not protected by any treaty or agreement.
No, so I'll fast forward to a lot of the stuff that I would necessarily talk about on a complete background story. So how I came into coaching was really through having a passion for fitness, mainly in the beginning, because I was in the military before, served 6 years in special forces. Previously to that, I was in the infantry. So I spent 11 years in the army altogether. Upon leaving that, my passion was fitness for a very long time prior to leaving the military. It was something that I saw myself being really suited to. So when I had the inkling to leave the military and that lifestyle, I just visualized this life in fitness and helping others progress in their own right. So when I left the military, my dream was to open my own gym. And obviously, you and I have both been gym owners for a long time.
Yeah.
Until I recently sold mine about 8 months ago. So but that's how we used to speak a lot.
Yeah.
Talking about business and talking about our gyms and whatnot. And that was a huge passion of mine. But as I opened my gym and then started coaching people for free, and then eventually turned that into a business, it's gone from more in-person coaching for fitness and physical results to then transitioning into more about why people do the things they do, human behavior essentially, because you're probably the same as me. I mean, you come from NLP background and stuff yourself, and it's not something I particularly use as a skill, but it's something that I use to weave into my coaching from some of the better methods within that and other coaching methods. And I guess there was a point in time in my coaching career where I realized there was more to it than just counting sets and reps and giving people diet plans, as we find out as we progress as coaches, right? So, and I realized that the people who maybe didn't progress as much as others, it was because of deeper rooted issues of why they were maybe in the position they were in, why they weren't exercising the behaviors that they should do that are conducive to a good result versus what they're currently doing, which is obviously against what they actually want. So bad behaviors or negative behavioral patterns, that type of thing. So I wanted to then find out. I went down the rabbit hole of trying to find out as much as I could about human behavior. And I suppose the more I looked at that and the more I found out, the more I realized I didn't know at that time. Going back to the earlier days of coaching, especially with bodybuilders, because bodybuilders are very much robotic characters. You tell them to do the toilet at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, they'll be stood there at 2:55 going like, okay, it's a minute till I can do my afternoon crap, whatever, right? So so you're dealing with a very particular individual. Same with athletes. They'll just do what they need to do because they're very driven for the outcome. But most people aren't athletes or professional bodybuilders or anything like that. So they need, they want results, but at the same time, they don't necessarily want it to consume their lives. So we have to then find a way of, carving that into their life rather than carving their life around it. So that's when I went down the rabbit hole, as I say, of trying to understand human behavior as much as possible and what drives that. And I suppose that's where I've got to now, and that's an ongoing process that I'm still learning. So, and that will always be the case, always be the student, so to speak. So that's pretty much a brief background of how my coaching career has gone and where it's at right now.
So you have a coaching program called the Modern Warrior, and I know that there's certain terms in it which are based on sort of military type terms. And do you find that, or do you bring in your discipline from your military background into how you help people coach? And what do people, when they come in, expect you to do for them?
A lot of the time, there's not a lot of information on the Modern Warrior Project anywhere on the internet. You see, that's not intentional. There's a bit of both. I don't want it to be like tell you everything about it out there. I like a little bit of mystique, so people come forward and say, "What is this all about? What is this Modern Warrior Project thing?" Because it elicits interest and curiosity, and curiosity is one of the drivers of intrinsic motivation. So I think that does work to a point. As far as the military terminology and stuff, I think it's something that for the demographic that I typically coach, which is men over 40. It doesn't start and end with that. There are some younger guys as well. I've even had guys, young athletes in their 20s in recent months. But typically it's men over 30, some over 30, mostly over 40, and then some over 50. But there's no limit to that. But it's typically that middle-aged man, busy dad, business owner, CEO type thing. That's my typical demography of coaching. So when I think about what resonates with the typical man who I coach, military style terminology and what comes with that just seems to kind of strike a nerve with them, and it captures their attention. And a lot of people just find it quite an intriguing methodology or world to be given an insight into. Because if you say, "Oh, well, this guy was in the special forces," now the reality is all my coaching stuff I learned outside the special forces for what I do now. Most of it, there are things from my military background when I was younger that did pave the way and built those foundations that I now work from. But at the same time, a lot of the coaching modalities that I would use now, I didn't know any of that, in detail back then. So I suppose it's like everything where you evolve over time, don't you? So I just think by making something in a way that you're hitting the sweet spot. So I don't want to make something to, join my SAS training program. That's just sounds really, really cheesy. And, it's no longevity to that. So it's about, this is my background. This is what I did. Yeah. This is kind of like my sort of, it's a bit like a, what would you say? It's a bit like a credibility.
Yeah, because
credibility,
you have the discipline, and you
yeah. So I come from that.
Things. Yeah.
So if you come through that process, you have to be of a certain ilk of person, otherwise you just wouldn't survive in that world. So I suppose for me, that's like a stamp of approval. It's credibility that then gives people confidence in me to trust me. And as you know, if you ever hire a coach, you need to trust them, right? So building trust is key. So I think that builds quick trust. I'm not saying it's a be all and end all, though. I obviously have to still prove myself with every client that I take on. Yeah. And hopefully I do that. But yeah, the military thing is just it speaks to people, and it also speaks to me still, because it's kind of like through my fiber, and it's what I really feel comfortable with, and I feel it can be authentic in that sense by having certain qualities that I picked up through those years to put into my coaching.
Yeah, and I suppose because obviously we both coach in a very specific niche, because my coaching is guys 30 to 50 as well. My niche is bodybuilding. It's the people who are really into their gym stuff, but they're not getting the results they want. So it's bringing on an expert coach to help with that. So it does help. I mean, if I wasn't ever a competitive bodybuilder, I'd probably find it quite hard to sell that as a, if I'd say doing, I don't know, long distance walking, for example, as a sport, I wouldn't be able to attach that credibility to it. And I suppose people, when they're looking at who they want to work with, it's, I mean, I don't know how you term it, but when I'm talking to a client, say for one-to-one, who I've got to work with over, say, 12 weeks, meeting every week, that sort of thing, I've got to think, would I have a beer with this guy? Is this someone who I would enjoy having a conversation outside of work? Because it's very important, I think, when you work with someone, that there's a rapport and there's a this is someone I can relate to, and obviously the customer, the client, has to relate to you as well. So how do you say pick people you work with?
It's a really good point, and I think it's really key for any coach and the demographic or the niche that they choose. And I do think that everyone should, not necessarily initially. I think young trainers coming through, they should work with everybody, because you've got to find what your niche is. You might not know what your niche is yet, so you've got to get the experience and do the reps and put the time in. And one of those parts of experience is working with different people to then have a variation of skills in those different types of niche. So, but when it comes to a niche market and demographic, I always say that, at the end of the day, one of the things that I advise them is one of the old classical, sort of self-help sayings, which is about you become an average of the 5 people you spend most time around. And it's true. So you need to give them that average of their peer that they're going to become part of, and that culture that comes with that. Now, that works two ways. So you want your clients to be, like you say, people who you'd have a beer with. So do I want them to be my average of 5? Because let's face it, when you're working as an online coach, and we do obviously in-person stuff, and you've got your gym and all that, but so I still meet up with my clients in person. I'm actually meeting one of them for a beer tomorrow. So exactly that point. So we go out, we meet up and have a beer as like two mates, right? And it's important. Most of my clients become friends. That wasn't my aim. It wasn't like I've got no friends, I'm going to start a business so I can get some mates. It just happened that way, that I just happened to work with a type of person that I thought, I really like this guy. And conversely, I've turned down a lot of potential clients, not because I don't want to help them, because I don't think I can really be the best coach for them. And that's nothing to do with I don't believe in my abilities to help the person. I just think that there won't be a rapport and there won't be a relationship for whatever reason, right? And that's established obviously very early on. So when I am taking on a client, it does have to be. I know this is a bit of a cliche of make sure you're the right fit and all the rest of it, but it is still kind of true. There's a reason for that kind of cheesy saying, which is making sure you're the right fit. You get a lot of coaches out there that say, I need to make sure you're the right fit, but they'll take on anybody. Now that's about that's about, for coaches watching this, it's like you need to be true to yourself. And there's empowerment sometimes in not taking on a client because you truly believe that they're not the right fit for your program or your coaching, because that's you staying true to your values, and that's you being true to yourself. And I think that's a really important lesson I learned long ago when I was working with anybody, because I wanted to help the planet and wanted to just help anybody that came across. But then you end up with frustrating clients that won't put the work in, or you don't get on with, and certainly wouldn't want to have a beer with. So like, you got to think the long game. So who do you want to be working with for long periods of time to get the best result? I'm not saying I want to keep the stabilizers on someone forever to keep them as a client, but at the end of the day, there are clients that I have who could just go on their own. They've learned a lot, and they've nailed their lifestyles and their training, their food. They've got good relationship with food. They're doing well, but like I always say to them, people will come for the coaching, but they'll stay for that community, that environment, because it becomes part of their identity. It's part of the tribe sort of mentality, and as humans, we need that. So it's a huge and really important point that you made there, Tom, because you've got to be accountable to somebody as well. And if you can have clients that you genuinely feel connected with, it will motivate you and inspire you. Your clients should inspire you as well.
Yeah, and I think it's what you said about the tribe is that is really important, especially about the average of the 5 people you work with, because having a good community around you. It's have you ever heard of the analogy of the bucket of crabs? Have you ever heard about that? Yeah. So it's that thing. If everyone's always happy with the life they are, and you're in that little group and you're trying to get out, people like trying to no come back and trying to restrain you. And what you really want is people who are going to lift you up and inspire you to be. And what I find when I'm working with some people, not everybody, some people, is that the people around them are not supportive of what they're trying to do. And they're like, and that's not because they're nasty people. It's just that they've got a group of friends they go out for beers with a lot. They go out for takeaways. They prefer not to go to the gym sometimes, for example. And this person, when they're trying to make this change in their life, their friends are like, oh no, don't go to the gym, come for a beer or whatever else. And they've almost got to remove themselves a little bit from, or even fully from, that community. Otherwise they're never going to get the results they want. There was it's an interesting story about the Vietnam War, where when the US soldiers went over to Vietnam, and a lot of them got addicted to opium when they were out there. And when they came back, the soldiers all went back. Obviously, there were some people in, say, middle to upper class, if that's the right term, environments, and there's some people in lower class. The people who mostly went back to the middle to upper class, who were removed from the drug-taking environment, all come off opium, had to come off it, but the people who were in the lower working class, if that's the right term, it's politically correct.
Yeah.
And they were around people who were taking drugs and everything else. They actually stayed on drugs. So that they were in that community altogether, and then they removed themselves, and there was that distinction. It's a really interesting story about the impact of community on your lifestyle.
I always say environment will always win. The environment always wins. So it's a bit like this analogy as well. One that I heard a little while ago, and I thought it's actually quite a brief, very potent way of explaining it. And that is when you talk about the environment always winning, especially in the long run, is that, let's say you're in a cold environment, if you can go outside, you can put warm clothes on to get warm in an environment short term. But if you choose to live your life in a freezer, the environment will eventually win. And it's true. So I always emphasize to my clients, and this is the other thing that people get confused with, because I remember I heard someone years ago talking about this, but it was almost like too much in one direction, like they didn't understand it themselves. I forget who it was actually. If I do remember, I won't say, because it might out somebody that was talking through a hole in their arse. But about your environmental factors and your friends and your social groups is, going to the extreme of like divorcing your parents and saying that you don't want to be around your family anymore or see them ever again is a bit too extreme. Whereas your friends, and you might have had a friend from school who you've known since you were 5 years old, and now you might be 30, 35, and they might be typically a bad influence, or they might have some bad habits that do rub off on you. But then you got to think, well, you can't just disown the person, because you obviously love the person as a long-term friend. So like I always say, like just like love your family and choose your friends, but at the same time there's a balance. It's like you've got to just decide how much energy you give the person or the people, because the first protocol would be to try and influence them, right? So and that's a typical one that can happen. We've all been in a place where we've worked somewhere, and you open a Tupperware box and it stinks of broccoli and fish, and people are going, oh, it stinks, you weirdo, right? And they're sat there with their sandwiches and their cakes and biscuits, and then initially the reaction is to criticize and laugh, and well, you get people. I always remember when I was working away, and I was doing this by myself. People would thought that because I was drinking a protein shake, I was taking steroids in a bottle. It was like that, the lack of knowledge, serious true story as well. It's like, this is back when, before my competitive bodybuilding days, I was on a job out in Baghdad actually, and a couple of old crusty people who were, a bit dinosaur in comparison to myself. I was quite young then, just when I left the military, and I was walking around after I do my workout, and they had a little gym over there. I'd do a workout, and I'd get my post-workout protein shake. When shakers were kind of like, it was only bodybuilders who could try and get out of a shaker bottle, like everyone does now. At the time, a shaker bottle was only gym people. So I'm a little shaker bottle with my Myoplex or something, and you're like, those sachets used to get, and I drink one of them as a meal replacer. And then one of the people actually told my boss, I think Lindsay's taking steroids.
He's drinking them.
So then I get pulled in going, what's this about the steroids? I was like, what steroids? And he's like, well, apparently you got this bottle that you carry your steroids around. And I was like, it's just a meal replacement, But this is the lack of knowledge there. But I don't know where I was going with that. But the environment, you see, when you've got to kind of like almost be the influence. So in this particular occasion, and I tell a better one actually, just to save time. when we went, when I was in the regiment, and you know, I was the guy who was always in the gym. 6 o'clock in the morning, I was in the gym. I had a mate who I trained with, but there was only a few of us who were the gym like we used to call us the gym queens.
Yeah.
Oh, you're a gym queen because you're in the gym at 6 in the morning pumping iron. And you know, there was a select few people. It was kind of weird. It was a bit like Pumping Iron back when that was filmed. No one was a bodybuilder apart from that small group of people in California, and everyone thought they were weird. So we went over to Baghdad, not to Baghdad, to Iraq when the Iraq War kicked off, 2003, and the initial period was really, really busy, right? But I knew at some point it would die down, and things would start to level off. So I thought ahead. I was like, right, how am I going to keep my gains? You know, I was like, I'm panicking because I'm going to be on ration packs and no weight training. I'm going to shrink because I was like in the gym all the time and I wanted to, you know, to keep my physique. So there was an old rusty set of dumbbells in the stores. They were like a 15-kilo dumbbells. And I took them and I hid them in the crate. I hid them in the pallets that were going in the freight. And then when we got to the other side in Jordan, we were forward mountain in Jordan, and we were packing all the wagons. And I was like, put these dumbbells in the back of the wagon, right at the back, and all the kit on top of it. So there was a point in time where all of a sudden I pulled a set of dumbbells from nowhere in the middle of the Iraqi desert, right? And it was like sun's out, guns out type day, you know, the first bit of sun, first bit of chill out time we'd had after weeks on end. And I was like, started pumping a bit of iron, and everyone's like, what the fuck are you doing? What are you doing, man? Crazy. I was like, I says, well, you know, you got to think ahead, lads. And they were like, oh, mental. Just wait till you get back home, blah, blah, blah. Then we had a bit of a lull. So there was probably like up to a week where there was a lot of time doing next to nothing, right? There was a lot of waiting around. So then one other person was like, oh, do you mind if I join in with you? Next thing, long story short, there was like 8 of us and I'd set a circuit up and we were using ammo boxes and
Like
water jerry cans. And it was pretty cool actually, right? I mean, you could charge memberships for this gym now because everyone would just think it was cool. So, but the fact of the matter is, right, I didn't have the environment of people who were want to lift weights, so I had to kind of be the sort of trailblazer in that little environment then. And then everyone started, once they laughed, and then they like, a bit cliche again, but they laugh and then they think a bit more. Then eventually they want to join in. Before you know it, you've got a group of people doing what no one thought they would in the first place. So it's an interesting theory, but it goes back to that point you made initially, which was environment is really everything.
That's so I've got a vision of you like sort of like analogy to Fight Club where you just stood there training all these people. Can I ever go? And then got this army of people who just lift weights.
It wasn't quite to that extreme, but it still caught on.
It's there's in my book, there's a guy, a client I worked with ages ago called Christian, who made a decision to change his life, and he part of the thing was his office that on Friday they had like Fat Fridays where they all had like pizzas or Coes or McDonald's or whatever else, and that was a major sticking point for him because that was his environment. So what he did is actually went for a walk when they got the pizzas and stuff in. He went for a walk. Went for a walk, come back, and they were ducking into pizzas, and he had his like packed lunch or whatever there. He had like chicken fajitas, so he had a proper meal, not like chicken and rice or whatever. And over the course of I think the first couple of weeks, people were like, "Why are you going for a walk?" Because I'm just going for a walk. And then over the course of a couple of weeks into months, he influenced a load of other people because he said, "I'm going for my walk," and a few people like, "I'm going to come for a walk as well," because I don't really want to have because they saw. He lost like 30, 40 kilos, really impressive weight change, but he lost all this weight. And all they saw was him losing weight and him going for a walk on a Friday afternoon. So they was like, hold on, if I go for a walk on a Friday afternoon, I'm going to lose loads of weight as well. But that change, he influenced his environment. And a few of his people from the office were going for walks or whatever else, trying to change their life because they saw the change in him. But the only thing they saw was him eating chicken fajitas at work and going for a walk on Fridays. So they thought maybe the walk was the secret element. Like, where are you going on this walk? What are you going to do to lose weight?
Yeah, but it's curiosity, right? It's people want to know how you're doing that. There's always that one person in an office or a corporate environment where they start eating differently. Then people initially, like I say, they'll maybe criticize, they'll maybe shrug their shoulders or whatever. But there'll be certainly initial negative connotations, and then when they see the person change, and they see that it's actually making a difference, they want a bit of it. They want some of that.
Yeah.
But that can work both ways. That can work in negative situations as well, obviously. So again, but it all comes back to the same principle, which is about the environmental factors of who you spend time around.
Yeah.
And you got and the discipline of like that client of yours, good example of being very disciplined with his time. He chose not to give that particular period of time in that environment his energy and his focus, and instead went his own way. And then, like you say, was followed by others, which is there's a lot of power in that. It's phenomenal what can be done.
So let's talk about coaching tools. So there's a whole load of different coaching tools on the market. There's apps, there's weight training equipment, supplements, all this sort of stuff. What do you give to your guys to help them progress?
Well, one thing I always emphasize to start with is that, and throughout the process, I would say, is that as much as, I think I've said this to you before, which is as much as is needed, but as little as possible, because too much just creates overwhelm. When you see these adverts, and ClickFunnels are really bad for this. They go, and to the untrained eye, you just go for it because it's like shiny object syndrome. And you go, get all this bundle deal, and it's like stacking the value of all this stuff that you're never going to use. So your chances are take away everything and give them one thing they'll actually implement. So I'm very careful of how much I give my clients at one time. So go and do this, implement a couple of things, and come back and tell me when you've done that. And then I'll give you something else to do. That tends to work, drip feeding things. But as far as tools go, other than I get feed. Obviously, you'll do the same thing. A lot of this is dependent on the information that you receive from the client. So you need to know as much detail as possible, how much time they have perceivably, that what their working week looks like, what their day looks like, what access they have to fitness equipment. Is it a gym? Is it the garage at home? Is it the spare room? Do they not have anything? And then you got to try and maybe encourage them to say, okay, well, for the program I think is going to be best for you, you're going to need to invest in a few things. Here's some recommendations. So I'll get them set up, with enough what I think they need to get started with some basic equipment, unless they're going to go to a gym. A lot of them have that already. They've just not been using it, right? So you got to advise properly on a few things to do with fitness equipment to start with. The right attire to wear. If they want to go out running, for example, they're going to have the right footwear. Digital tools are a big thing. Obviously, you and I both use digital tools. So I used like for all the physical training side of things, I use True Coach for all my programs, and just get them to download the app, and then they get all the workouts on the app. Being the demographic they are, a lot of them do like dialogue though. So I'm actually looking at ways I can give them the choice. So a lot of people like physical books to write in, so like a workout log, they want to do that. But a lot of them, what they do is, instead of doing being in the gym with the True Coach app and being on the phone, which I don't like anyway. Typically, I don't like people being on their phone in the gym because there's distractions on that. But if they use their phone in the gym, I can either say, if you're happy with that and it's distraction free, you're going to be disciplined with your time, you're not going to be checking Instagram and shit like that, then use that. However, if you feel you can't be like that, and be honest with yourself, workout log, copy the workout into a book and just take that into the gym with you. And then you can use that. But other things like this, I got this new nutrition program on board recently as well, which is pretty cool.
Blatant plug about to happen.
Yeah, so obviously recently you've taken on your nutrition model, which is which is one of the best outsources I've made, because I think outsourcing is really key to get your time. At the end of the day, you got to try and spend most of your time on the thing that you really feel you're good at and like doing the most, and outsource the stuff that you feel that, not that you don't like doing necessarily. I managed people's nutrition for years, but like the tools for coaches that you've implemented, and this is not an intentional plug, but it's just genuinely saying this, like that's been really helpful to me as a coach and my clients, because they get a really good proven method to utilize for something that's going to give them a lot of autonomy, flexibility, and control. Not just for the time they're on the program, but for forever. That's a tool that you could essentially take and use for the rest of your life. and be able to manage your weight for the rest of your life, as long as you implement the strategies, like anything. So that's been a huge help. So outsourcing that to you has been a breath of fresh air. Money well invested. I mean, I think it's great value for the money that I invest in that. And they love it. So that, along with the instructional video, and that has saved me a lot of time and energy. So training, nutrition. I also have something that I developed called the Modern Warrior Battle Planner. And the Battle Planner is like a productivity journal. But having used multiple types of journals in the past, you've probably used various versions yourself, Tom.
Yeah.
Journaling is huge. I mean, it's something that I always recommend to the clients, because a lot of people just don't give themselves the time to themselves that they really could do with to get themselves reset on a daily basis and set up for the day, and unwind in the right way at the end of the day. So it's a productivity journal that I'm yet to put into a physical product, but it will be going into a physical product once I get everything finalized. But it's essentially a format that I give them to plan, project, and manage their lives. So there's like the daily battle plan, the weekly battle plan. There's a daily and weekly reflection periods where all you're doing is projecting, planning, implementing, and then scoring yourself at the end of the day, and then collectively at the end of the week. So the way this planner works is that every single day you assess your efforts. Now, this is the other thing I was going to talk about in a minute, about effort versus performance, which can subconsciously elicit various different responses. So how was your efforts? What was the effort like that you put in today? Give yourself a score, and then here's some examples of how you can score yourself. That's a number of 1 to 5. And at the end of the week, they've got a collective weekly score. And what they're looking at is that trending upwards, so they can obviously keep improving their effort level throughout time. And obviously it keeps them very organized and keeps them attached to the non-negotiable tasks and whatnot. So that's a really good tool that I feel is effective, but initially that's one of the hardest things to get people to implement. People often use excuses of time's against them, they've been busy, yada yada yada. But I'm like, well, show me your planning sheets for the last 2 weeks, and people who are using it will never have the problems that are created by not using it. So if you ask the person who's talking about time and lack of, or whatever it is that's external factors getting in the way, you say to them, well, produce your battle planner. And they'll be like, oh, well, I've not been using it. There's your answer. You're not planning your days. You're not scheduling stuff. We had this conversation recently about the content schedule and stuff. If you plan it and you schedule it, it's going to happen, and you're going to feel better. You're going to all of a sudden get results. Excuse me, my daughter's trying to call me. You're going to get results. So it's momentum then. But usually the answer is right there in front of people. So the battle planner for me has been one of the most effective tools, but it is one of the ones that it's typically paid lip service to. But the importance of it is huge. So that's something I need to kind of try and drill into them over time. So that's the main tools I use. Yeah. Go on.
Yeah, I think the planning out is I have a smart goals tracker which I use with some of my clients. I'm the same as you in that some people like all the Google Sheets and writing stuff down, and I had a client recently and I said, we could track these things so you can make sure you do them. I showed him the Google Sheets. He said, mate, I'm not doing that, because all I look at every day is sheets, Google Sheets and spreadsheets. So that looks like work. So in the end, we kept a verbal track of it each week, and and that worked. But I'm a big fan of setting your goals, planning it out, and then tracking it, and then seeing how you did, your scores, and keeping your accountability for it.
Yeah, the other thing I was going to on that as well, something that I emphasize is that when you think about how people frame things that they want to achieve. So let's say like goals are important, right? So they're important, but they're checkpoints. They're only markers. They're not the definitive answer to life. It's not like when I reach this goal, I'll be happy. If you think about a client that says, I just want to, I know I'm comfortable around 10 stone, and then they're 11 stone. So you go, okay, so what's your biggest challenge at the moment? I just can't seem to shift the weight, and I'm unhappy. I feel fat, and blah blah blah. It's okay. So what would make you feel more comfortable with yourself? Well, I know I'm happy at 9 stone. So then you ask them, okay, so when you get to 9 stone, is that you're going to be, it's fine, life is complete. But you know that when they get there, something else will be a problem. So I always say to my clients, look, goals are important, right? And how you frame goals are even more important. So if it's outcome based all the time, the in-between bits aren't really the fulfillment. So if you're just thinking about the next target all the time, almost wishing your life away, or just being so focused on the target, you're setting yourself up for disappointment, because when you get there, and if you don't have another goal, or you're not necessarily fulfilled, then you got to ask yourself why. So it's like there are two different types of mindsets. So the fixed and growth mindset, which typically known as entity mindset, being fixed mindset, and incremental mindset being the growth mindset. So incremental mindset, more from a self-mastery point of view. So if you think of kids in school, basing their whole characters and personalities and potential for success based on how they do in an exam, and then identifying themselves with the performance that they gave on that exam and how they did as a score, being the be all and end all of who they are, versus the person who maybe doesn't do so well, but then doesn't frame it as a failure, frames it as a must try harder. So how hard did you try? Honestly, probably not enough. There you go. Your result was reflective of the effort that you put in. So what do? You need to try harder. So I mean, you read about anyone like Michael Jordan, anyone who's like a famous high achiever. It was all about the effort and all about the constant quest for improvement. That unrelenting. I mean, one of the regimental ethos from the SAS is the unrelenting pursuit of excellence. Now, what that means is like you're not ever in a frame of mind. You've got the humility to know that you're never there, but you constantly want to be getting better all the time. So when people come to me and then they have a week that's maybe not perfect, and they might have missed a workout, or they maybe ate something they shouldn't have eaten, I think, well, okay, well, how can you improve on that next time? How can you get a little bit better? We're not looking for perfection. We're just looking at effort to improve. And if you're doing that, if you're always improving, you're always going to be happy, because the feedback loop that you give yourself is that I'm progressing towards, that progress equals happiness type theory. And if you're progressing at anything, you could be, well, let's say in business, let's say you were starting out coach and you were financially struggling, and then you were thinking to yourself, oh my God, when I've got this much money, I'll have this many clients, I'll have this much money, then I'll be able to afford this car, right? And this is a lot of young trainers will think, because they're very materialistic and stuff based, versus someone who has been a trainer for, or been in a position for 20 years and is rolling money, but where they are is very comfortable. And yes, they've got money, they've got comfort, they've got stability, they've got a business that's functioning, but they might not be fulfilled, versus the young trainer who's progressing at a good rate, and they're not where they want to be necessarily yet, or they can't afford the house they want to have yet, or they can't. You think of these two people. If one is sort of like incremental mindset, where there's someone who's a young thruster trying to be better all the time, and they're receiving that feedback of month on month, they're getting better results with clients or financially, and they're improving year on year, month on month, versus the person who's sat there in one place doing well but bored. Then who's going to be happier? The person with less money who's progressing is going to be happier than the person who's made all the money and is stagnant. So I think it should be an ever evolving, an ever going, an ongoing quest for improvement and progress.
I think there's a really good point there. Is that like he's talking about this, the systems you're building. So it's that 1% movement every day. And what I talk about with my clients is, say, well, if you want to be, let's say, for example, this 9 stone person who maybe has a fitter body, more muscle, whatever. If you want to be that person, you've got to behave and act like that person. But you're not going to do that overnight. You're not going to go from not training in the gym at all to 5 days a week, hour sessions. You're not going to go from eating 50 grams protein a day to 200 grams protein a day. It's that gradual movement. So it's the starting off with 1 session a week, then 2, then 3, then 4, then I'll eat 60 grams, then 70 grams, then as you progress up, you don't that the handbrake turn mentality, which is a lot of these coaching programs, is like, right, let's get you in, let's boot camp you into this really restrictive environment where you're going to do all the right things, but you're not learning the systems. You've got a goal to get to, but you're not learning the systems to support that. And I think this is where potentially coaching has got a bad name, in that people get results short term because they're very goal orientated. Same as how we were when bodybuilding. It's like, right, I've got to get shredded for that day, and whatever else happens, as long as I'm shredded for that day, that's what's important. And I think that mentality is what's applied to a lot of the boot camp type stuff. It's like, right, you got 6 weeks, so we'll get as much weight off you or whatever in 6 weeks. And then it's like, well, what happens after that? Oh, I don't know. Pay me and we'll do another 6 weeks, that sort of thing. Or go away, get fat, and then come back and we'll pay and do another 6-week program.
Yeah, that's typical. And
you're gone.
There's different there are different schools of thought in that as well. And I think it's the application of everything that is really important. So I always say you should be looking at long-term gratification rather than short-term gratification. But most people do live in a world of short-term gratification. They want the result now. And I remember Phil Lowry actually said one of the analogies he used to use years ago was about like the payday loan type scenario, where if you go and get a payday loan or you borrow money from a loan shark, you'll get what you want very quickly, but the price you pay in return is going to be huge, and it's going to be painful. A bit like very restricted or very over intense 0 to 100 in a day type thing programs, then they can have the same effect. With that as well, though, I mean, there are different scenarios, I suppose, as well. So if you were someone who was an experienced trainer, so this is where it gets confused, right, by people. If you were someone who's an experienced trainer, so let's say it was yourself, Tom, right? So let's say you were really busy with your gym doing renovations or something, and you were in there every day doing a lot of stuff, and you weren't really eating as much as you should be. So you weren't really eating as much, and you'd maybe been eating a few of the wrong things. You were so busy that people are dropping you off sausage rolls instead of chicken and rice, and you just rinsed with physical labor, and your diet's not been great. You're not lifting a weight for maybe a few weeks, or not consistently for maybe a couple of months. And you look at yourself in the mirror one day and you go, "Fuck, I feel out of shape. I've not got a tan. I'm like, I feel flat. I feel untrained. I feel soft, and I feel like I put on a bit of body fat. And I've got a bloody holiday in 4 weeks or 6 weeks, right?" So then you panic mode sets in. So someone with your control and your level of experience could put the pedal to the metal for a short period of time, right? But the difference being there, you're very, very capable, and you've got a full understanding of how to manage that. So you can put everything in place that can manage yourself in the aftermath. So with the right level of experience, and this is why people like Hollywood actors can do that, because they've got a management system in place, unless it's the extreme measures like Christian Bale, which is obviously, completely messing your body up long term, being in such extremes all the time. But if you think about most situations with Hollywood actors, and they get paid a hell of a lot of money to be in shape for a certain period of time, from a certain date to film particular scenes or whatever, then a trainer comes in, an entourage comes in with everything they need that plays a part in the quest to get them in shape quickly. Right now, it's not something that they would want to do forevermore, because it's not sustainable. But they have management in place to take care of that afterwards. Where most people fall short is that they do these things blindly, in the hope of getting all the answers to their questions and problems, only to fall flat in their face when the time is up and they don't have anything to then have any sort of continuation management. So this is where really good coaching comes into place. So I think you can sometimes put your pedal to the metal a little bit, but it's the application and who's applying it, I would say, is really important.
I think on that point is that it depends where you're starting as well. So let's take your example. So I'm normally in really good shape, and actually what you described was actually me during lockdown, because during lockdown we were refitting the gym. I had hardly any time to eat. My sleeping all was over the place. I couldn't train because we were refitting the gym, so I didn't train for 4 weeks, all this stuff. So I did get out of shape really quickly, and it was just obviously very stressful time as well, really horrible time. So I went from being in really good shape, and I regressed back to more body fat than I wanted, and being out of shape and everything else. So for me to get back to where I was I just have to put the systems in place to get there, and then I can maintain because I was already at that place. Whereas the person who's doing the diet to get into shape, to get to this point, they're starting from here. So they've got to put all these things in place to get to here. But because that's their normal state, until the body learns that this is the normal state. And for the benefits of the podcast, I've got like a distance with my hands here to show the distance between the regression and progression. But the idea is that if you're in a essentially a before picture, if you've not achieved the after picture already, it's going to take you a lot longer to get to that after picture. Whereas if you were the after picture and gained a little bit of weight, got a bit out of fit, and you're now the before picture, it's actually, I think it's easier to get back to, like you said, because we've already achieved that. So it's easier to put the pedal to the metal and get to that point.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So again, it's application. Yeah. And who it's for. Yeah, but that's a lot of people. It's like a friend of mine actually said he was going on keto. I think I might have told you this on that podcast about the. I might have told you this on the session you did with my guys last week, and about I'm back on the keto again. It worked last time.
Did it?
Yeah, it did it because you're having to do it again. It's like I went and did a 6-week boot camp once. It got me in really good shape. So every time I do it, it works. Yeah, whilst you're doing it, it works, but then it stops working when you stop doing it. Funny enough.
Yeah.
So that's because again, it's about, and again, it's a mindset of how are you thinking about what you want to achieve? Are you thinking about it as something you have to do to achieve a goal, an outcome, or is it something that is it more? How do I want to live? How do I want to feel and look? Who do I have to become to be that all the time?
Exactly. Yeah. It's like the Hollywood actor. He assumes a role for a period of time, so he becomes a person for a period of time. But when the filming's finished, that's it.
Yeah.
But you're not a Hollywood actor getting into a role for a diet. This is your life. You have to change. So a Hollywood actor, when he finishes, even if he plays the most evilest bad guy in the film, that's not him in real life. But he's just assumed that mentality, he's assumed that identity for the role. And but if you're trying to get into shape for the long term, that's how your life is. You're not assuming a role, you're not acting in a film. That's who you've got to be. And I think a lot of people don't get that, is that, like you said, that your mate, I'm going to go on keto for 6 weeks to get into shape. Yeah, but what happens after that? I'll lose it normally again. And you say, okay, and what happens then? It's like you see the cogs turning. It's like, oh yeah, I'll get back into shit shape again. And but like I said, people think short term. They think 6 weeks to get into this shape. What happens after? I don't care as long as I get into shape in that 6 weeks.
Yeah, and it comes from a place of frustration more than anything. Frustration and impatience. Because if you give someone 2 options, take the blue pill, the red pill. The blue pill being that you start off with a small habit change and then progressively change that and try and achieve one habit change at a time, and then move on to something else and solidify that, and then move on to something else. But micro adjustments and then at the same time, progressing with your fitness. Almost to the point, you heard of like a theory called the challenge skills balance. So the challenge skills balance being on one side of the scale, you've got not enough that can elicit boredom and lack of progress, versus the other side, which is going to be so extreme that it overloads the system with fear and overwhelm, and then you get disengagement in each side of that. So the sweet spot in the middle somewhere is like a certain amount. I think there's a certain percentage that I can't remember the exact figure, but it's a certain percentage over what you perceive as being right for you. Is that a little bit more is enough to get you that response and challenge you, but not fill you with overwhelm and fear, so that you want to keep doing it. Like take the guy who's never been in the gym before and smash the shit out of his quads so he can't walk for 2 weeks. he's then going to relate the gym to a torture chamber. Yeah. Whereas you take him into the gym, get him moving a little bit, so the next day he wakes up and goes, "Oh, I feel that, but I feel good. I've done it." There's a massive difference there. The latter is going to elicit motivation and the desire to go back and achieve that, because you get feedback of that felt good, and it hurt a little bit, but I know it's making me a better person. So it's about that sweet spot in the middle. I would say achieving the challenge skills balance is really important for progress in any situation. So yeah, building habits and stuff, progressively is key.
Cool. So Lindsay, let's it's been nearly on an hour, and I know you're pretty busy, and obviously your phone's been lighting up while we've been talking, so you're obviously a busy in-demand guy. So thank you so much for coming and sharing your ideas and giving us some thoughts on stuff that we can do, as in my audience can do, to change their lives. Can you just let us know where you can be contacted if people want to contact you? So
my main channel of inquiry is Instagram. So it's just at the Lindsay Bruce. You probably put that on the screen somewhere, wouldn't you?
I'll highlight it up. Yeah.
So at the Lindsay Bruce is my Instagram. Probably the best place to just go and find out some stuff. And there's not, like I said, there's not a huge amount of information out there on what I do, but I do have a new website coming soon as well, which will be live, and that'll be themodernwarriorproject.com.
Excellent. Yeah, it's well worth a look, because whenever we have these chats, I always go away with new ideas and stuff to think about. So yeah, it's worth giving Lindsay a follow. He's got some very good stuff. Brilliant. Thank you very much, mate. I appreciate your time. I'll let you get on to this lovely day that's outside.
Absolute pleasure, mate. Thanks for having me.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Good man.